What's up guys, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel. On today's video, I bring you news for months in SaGa ReUniverSe. They just announced double banners. Romancing Festival Polka and Liz starts the new SaGa The Stage celebrations, where we will have other banners in the future like Igomol, Joe, and 7 Heroes. We don't know if it will be a 4-week or a 3-week celebration. So I'm here to guide you through the new styles. We are here on Reddit in a post by Hands43. As always, thank you so much for the amazing job. And we have the comparisons to the JP versions of the styles. Polka was buffed. He now has better endurance, intelligence, and will. He can use spells, but this version only has sword skills. If you want to use spells, you will have to inherit. Polka has better endurance. He was pretty bad. Agility is not his main gameplay anyway. And the battle begins. He gives a heat up of super extreme effect that will increase damage potential by 50% for everyone in the party. That's interesting. And then he will cast Undying Will that will be permanent in the fight. Attack damage increases by 20% at all times. And when your HP is not full, damage taken decreases by 25%. So he can also cast it via a skill, and then you have 2 stacks of Undying Will for the whole fight, and also an HP recover for revive if you are unconscious. It will revive with around 2000 HP. So when you consider you're going to increase your damage output by 40% at all times, and then by 120% when HP is full. And then if your HP is not full, your damage taken will decrease by 2 stacks of 25%. Pretty interesting for a character that is actually designed for damage. When he is attacked, he nullifies heat attacks and then counters direct attacks with back detonation. That is a double S power attack that heals for medium. That should be around 1,500 at least. Then by the end of a turn, he recovers HP of everyone by very small. That should be around 300. So that is good, but also if you use too many HP recovers by the end of a turn, that means that on the next turn, you'll be on full HP, and the first hit from the enemy will not have the damage decrease. So only after you're not on full HP, you will receive less damage. So have to remember that. When you attack, you get 1 BP, and weak attack will activate Farclad Flash twice. Farclad Flash is a skill that has slash and heat damage, and also buffs heat damage for 5 turns. So if you keep attacking, you're gonna buff your damage more and more. On overdrive attack, you will activate skill number 3, and that one is this 10 BP attack that has slash and heat. It casts an attack boost that is 30% increase in damage for everyone as a command, or 25% as a chase, and then will buff SGR dexterity and intelligence by 20% as a chase and 30% as command. So if you use it, you're gonna sum all those values, but you have to spend 10 BP. Well, Polka will always get at least 6 BP if you are landing weak attacks, and 7 BP on overdrive. It's not that hard to keep on using S3 every turn, and it will improve the damage of your squad, but there's no endurance or will buffs here. His skill number 1 is a free attack that recovers his HP by around 1,000. And then by the end of a turn, he fills his overdrive gauge by 45 points and has his word increasing 5, increasing damage potential at all times by 30, decreasing damage resisted by 40%, and has a 37% chance to evade resisted attacks. So he is pretty defensive, and he can help your party survive better while still doing enough damage to be your main attacker. Although the fights will be longer if he's the only one really doing damage, since he's not on the levels of or strongest nukers like Hachi, Tatiana, even Leon and others, but can do the job if you have patience. He is going to receive a 4 out of 5. Good, but also ultimately skippable. Next one is Evelyn. They buffed her endurance because it was terrible. Only 77. Now we have 119 will. Agility is 110, and it's good because she is a debuffer, but a different type as well. 131% intelligence is also pretty high. She starts the fight with 14 VP, and that's important because she has a skill number 3 that uses 14. On Raw begins, she casts Ancient Spell on all enemies, and when they attack, they would then self-debuff SGR and intelligence by 10% for all enemies. So if you are in a fight where the enemy has, I don't know, 3 minions, a total of 4, boss and 3 minions, then each one of them will trigger the effect for all of them. So they will lose 40% SGR and intelligence. Makes a lot of sense when you're fighting versus multiple enemies, but if it's just one enemy, then it's just 10% SGR and intelligence debuff. That is something that you can cast again, get skill number 3, and this one will last for 2 turns, because after you use this attack, you're gonna enter charged stance that starts on the next turn, and you can attack again with Cold Slash. That is 3 hit attacks with C power. Look, super strong 3 hits with C power. It's stronger than any 4S attack, and it has Shadow and Slash damage, contrary to just Shadow. And then she still casts E power 6 hit attack with Shadow and Cold. Well, kind of strange to start with Shadow, then switch to Shadow and Slash, and then to Shadow and Cold. The only permanent element is Shadow. She then recovers 2 BP. Every time that she attacks, she self-heals and gets BP, and will miss, I believe, 2 BP to have a perfect cycle. That is easy to get. Most BP batteries will give you enough. So if there's just one enemy, you're gonna do a lot of damage, and I say that she's a damage dealer. And if you are after multiple enemies, she's better as a debuffer. Okay, but more about the other stuff. She can also apply defense down to the enemies, decreasing the defense by 10%, and will also debuff intelligence when attacking by 10%. So, actually, if you are attacking, you will be able to debuff 10%, and then the enemy will self-debuff 10% for a total of 20. But then on the next turn, you can debuff much more because you are attacking multiple times. But that's not constant. That is a little of a problem. For the last passive, we have 40% damage increase at all times and reduces damage taken by 30. Skill number 1 can debuff intelligence by 15%, actually by 25 because you will also apply the other extra debuff. And skill number 2 applies Slash and Shadow defense down, but it's a pretty weak attack and also very cheap. So you want to use skill number 3, and it's useful as an AoE debuffer for multiple targets, or you can use her as a damage dealer, but then as a damage dealer we have replacements. It's not really important. Evelyn is good when she works, but she won't work in all fights. I still believe that Poe, Acelus, and J-Mew are better debuffers. I think she deserves a 4 out of 5. Moving on, Zenon is a damage dealer with 100 endurance, 110% will, 132% dexterity, and 120% agility. It's really buffed the status of this character. And it makes sense because he wants to apply effects to decrease the enemy sun defense. Okay, he starts the fight with 13 BP to use his skill number 3, and on turn begins he casts this weak spot on the enemy. And then when you attack the enemy with sun, then the defense of the enemy for sun attacks will decrease by 20%. That's like Sundered, auto-casted, but only for sun attacks. Similar to Khalid, but for sun. And then every time that you use attack, you're gonna chase with S1. And S1 is 1 BP attack. And then on all turns, you will also chase with S2. That is a triple S power attack that casts the defense boost and self-recovers. On even turns, you're gonna chase with double hit C power attack. That is also similar to triple S damage. And then on multiple of 3, you can activate skill number 3. That is a much stronger attack that will then also give a sun attack boost to all allies for each of the 3 attacks. Each hit will buff 25% of sun damage, and it also works for the skill itself, so each hit does more. He is really a damage dealer. He recovers 1 BP every time he attacks, has 5 hit ups of 30%, that will give him 150 on turn 5 onwards, and also another hit up with 15% volley 5 times for a total of 225%. Has 1 damage reduction passive for minus 25% damage. Seems a little low, but he was buffed, so no worries. He works as a damage dealer for fights where we can bring sun attackers like Goddess. Also Matriarch. Matriarch has utility. Goddess can heal and give overdrive, so they actually work super well together, especially if you already have Final Impress. That will give a lot of BP to keep using his skill tree if possible to increase damage, since he's already casting weak spot. If you wait some turns, your Goddess is going to do a lot of damage, but by himself he's not really that good. I would say that he deserves 3.5 without support, and if you have the character I mentioned, more of a 4 out of 5. The last of the banner is Fairy, and she has 125% SGR, 100% endurance and will, because that's the average these days, and, well, low agility. Battle begins, she will then cast a weapon enhanced passive to everyone, increasing spear damage by 50%, and then also Screw Lancer. Screw Lancer will give you a 15% attack boost and a 15% defense boost to everyone that has a spear. This is pretty similar to what Rose does for guns. It is extremely limited and made for remembrance battles. Also, when she recovers, she gonna get 5 VP because she has a very good recovery skill that recovers from 0 to max, cleanses and applies 1 evasion for 1 time on turn to our allies. Every 5 turns you're gonna get another charge of this, and using it will recover 5 VP to herself and to everyone else. So it ends up being free to use, since she also gets extra 3 VP by the end of a turn. Damage taken is decreased by 25% and by another 30, and damage potential by 40. As you can see, she's not made for damage, has 2 support skills, and the third one is a double S power attack that will buff Will by 30%, apply defense boost that decreases damage taken by 25%, but only stack for 2 turns, and 10 BP may be a little too much, but she got 6, so 4 BP from support will give her enough. But there is also First Illusion 5, and that one applies a passive for 1 turn where you get 30% damage increase and 25% chance to evade. It is so that you have a cycle of skill 3 and 1 if you don't have enough VP. Not really interesting. You can also just inherit a stronger attack from her past styles. Really only useful for Remembrance Battle. I would say that she deserves a 3.5 out of 5. On Remembrance, without it, it is even worse. Easy to skip, but if you are having difficulty versus a Megalith Dragon, you can get a lot of utility. This banner will receive a Silver Minus award, since none of these characters are meta, none of them move the strategies forward, they can be easily skipped, but they also work if you like them. Moving on, Liz banner is much better. She was buffed, but only Endurance and Will are higher now. She still has Dexterity because she's a hybrid unit that can use both skills, I don't know why. Agility is just on the average levels for these days, and Intelligence is also not that strong. She was not made for damage. She starts the fight with 13 VP to use her skill number 3. She then feels her Overdrive Gauge on start of the fight, and then when she's attacked, she nullifies cold damage and counters direct attacks with Water Dragon's Boom. That is an S-Power attack that can cast 2 different shields that decrease damage for cold damage and spell damage. I don't know if they stack. I mean, if the attack is a spell with cold, then both will trigger, but I don't know if you can keep casting to decrease damage. By the end of a turn, we have 2 extra BP, so she has 5 BP per turn. Then at the end of a turn, she gets 45 points of OG Gauge, so she enters Overdrive every 2 turns easily, no matter what happens. She has a single target skill that is pretty different, 5 VP to cast Fantasia. That will give you 37% chance to evade, and also an HP recover by the end of a turn that will recover around 1.2 thousand. Everything lasts for 5 turns, and you can use it 2 times before you have to recharge every 5. And then it could be theoretically used to allow a character that can solo content. For example, you can use it on Galahad when Galahad works, so that he survives well the first turns and then he eventually solos. But it's single target, it's hard to use. On turn begin, she gives defense boost to everyone, decreasing damage taken by 15%. Also buffs all status by 20 and gives 1 BP to everyone as well. That is very similar to what you can get from Leon or status and BP with that extra defense boost. So in the end, she actually has 6 BP per turn. When attacking on Overdrive, you have to really attack, has to be a skill that deals damage. She will recover HP of everyone's by around 1.5 thousand. And cast a guard up that decreases damage taken by 35%, does not stack with other guard ups, but that is very useful since she already starts with OG fully charged. The recovery will be wasted, but from turn 2 onwards, you'll be needing of healing. There is also Bow Intrinsic that increases her damage potential by 30%. She has 37% chance to evade resisted attacks and decreases damage taken by 40 when resisting. She has a skill number 3 that is what she wants to use. It's a single target attack with cold and pierce damage, triple S power, and cast defense boost to all allies. But there is a big problem here. Her agility is 94%. They didn't even buff. The skill is not fast like Impress is. It is the same BP cost without the fast part. And it's also double element. I don't know why they didn't fix this problem. And since you will be using this skill on overdrive, it is okay. But if you have a lot of BP batteries, you can keep using this skill every single turn. But her own design says, on overdrive, use this skill. And on non-overdrive turns, either use skill 1 or skill 2. But if you can, just keep using S3, it is very useful. Because then you have 3 defense boosts that decreases by 35 multiplicatively, another for 15, and even Guard Up Large, another 35. So when you consider everything, you can see that Liz is the best replacement for Leon. If you don't have him, it's very recommended to pull here. In a stack, and she works super well with Fornews if you got him, because he increases cold damage and also applies other effects like extra BP and extra buffs. Liz is the best character of this bunch, and she will receive a 4.5 out of 5 because of the difficulty to cast 13 BP skills and not being fast, since she has low agility. But overall, very useful character nonetheless. Moving on, Meline was buffed for higher SGR, 135 is close to 140, endurance is 100%, agility 105, will 105 as well, so very good values, and SGR is the main one. She starts with 12 BP to use her best skill. Round begins, she applies weak spot for lightning, just like Zenon. Every time that you use a lightning attack on the enemies, they will lose 20% of their lightning defense. Then every turn she gives all allies lightning charge for 3 times, and when they use a lightning attack, they will recover 1 BP, and that can trigger 3 times for a total of 3 BP if your character has 3 attacks like Meline. And then a defense boost that decreases damage taken by 10%, lasts for 2 turns and will stack. So when she attacks, she activates skill 1 twice. Skill 1 will improve your lightning attack boost to the whole squad by 30%, and since she uses twice, it's 60% lightning attack boost, and she will self-recover extra 3 BP because of her lightning charge. So she combos super well with Kihachi, because she will also be getting extra BP to keep using her skill 3 instead of other skills. MacLeod will also be able to keep using the best skill as well. Then on overdrive attack, you're gonna get another lightning charge, so you actually recover 9 BP in those scenarios, and then you will also apply more defense boosts. She is a character that will get easily into overdrive because of her chases, so that's pretty good. Also on turn begins, she gives 15% attack boost to everyone, and then an elemental enhance that will be permanent, increasing lightning damage by 20% for a total of 100% increase. She also increases damage for herself by 40% at all times and reduces damage taken by 30% too. Now, she has 2 different attacks to use most of the time. The second one has 8 BP cost and hits 2 times with C power, and has slash and lightning damage in a row area. That it was made for Spiral 270 if you need, and also for future remembrance where the enemies will be aligned in a row. But theoretically, this is very similar damage output as the skill number 3. That is triple S power, slash and lightning, but this time single target. It's a fast skill instead of just normal, and cast a defense boost of medium effect that lasts for 3 turns. That means that you decrease damage taken by 25% multiplicatively, and 25% is lower than 35, but it is very useful because she's a character that will improve the damage of your Kihachi and will then allow you to still get some defenses from the whole kit. She is much better than Khalid, and I would say that she, when used with Kihachi, if you have her, a 4 out of 5. If you don't, you lose a lot of value. Moving on, there is Valdor, that is a farmer. 140% agility and 130% SGR is all that you need to know. Although he does not easily die from attacks since he has 95% endurance and will, and also at least 30% damage reduction. You're not gonna use this guy outside of, I don't know, farming or Wells of Challenge, because he has a lot of damage increase. Starts the fight with 30 BP and then can use 15 BP attacks and does not generate BP after that. So you can use 2 times column or row or AoE attack that has blunt and pierce damage. So he's gonna solo, he only attacks once, super fast, but it's a farmer in a world where many farmers can also do something else. So I don't think he's super worked. I will give him a 2 out of 5. The last one will be Shindu. And they buffed his endurance and will. They are pretty nice now. He has very low agility because he's on delay, it doesn't matter. But he still needs a little to land some of his attacks, since agility does matter when talking about accuracy for spells. He applies a 30% damage reduction for everyone. And then on Battle Begins, he blocks damage for 1 turn. The second turn onwards, he enters a delayed stance, where he will always be on delay. When allies are attacked, he has a 37% chance to cover that ally and reduce damage taken by 30%, I believe. When he is attacked, he then buffs Endurance, Intelligence, and Will for all allies by 5%. Then, when he is directly attacked, he gets a chase attack called Strong Wind Counter. That will counter with Slash Gust, an 8 power attack that applies 10% defense down for 1 turn, so only he himself will benefit. When he is indirectly attacked, he then gets another chase called Lightning Wind Counters, and that one will trigger skill number 3. That is a 10 BP AoE attack with B power, slash and lightning damage, and casts an attack boost of 10% as a chase to our allies. This will be very useful if he's indirectly attacked. So what is the trick? On turn 1, he's not going to chase because everything will be wasted, since the chase lasts for only 1 turn. But on turn 2 onwards, he will then have delay. And after the enemy attacks and buffs him, he will then attack based on the type of the attack the enemy used. If there are multiple enemies in a fight, he makes sense. If there are just one enemy and he attacks like 3 to 4 times, he does not make sense, since his damage is really bad. He has 25% damage reduction as an extra, another 3 BP for a total of 6, and then he has 20% defense up every turn to turn 5, alongside another 20% damage increase. So, very defensive. You don't see damage potential on this character unless he stacks a lot of intelligence buffs and have support to increase his damage, and even then, he just doesn't help as much. Skill number 1 applies a 20% defense up for even more. He would then buff Endurance, Agility, Intelligence, and Will for everyone by 50% on max level, alongside a heat up for damage increase 20% whole fight. He then has the skill number 2, that is 1 BP for AoE, Slash, and Lightning. Or skill 3, that is the same one that we discussed it, but this one would then buff 15% attack boost to everyone when used as command. So, if he can use the third skill many times, because the enemies are using indirect attacks, and he attacks, I don't know, like 6 times at least, then he can increase the damage of your party. But he himself takes too much time to reach that point, and we just got Faye, that is already a little inferior to Final Emperor, that is superior to Julian, and I know he uses staffs, and that means he works for Remembrance if you want, but he does not stop multi-hit attacks, much like Faye. Faye buffs 15%, he buffs 5% for Endurance, Intelligence, and Will. I much prefer Faye version of this. I think he deserves a 3.5 because he still applies a lot of defensive buffs, and it's super easy to skip. This banner will receive a Silver Plus award because we have 4 styles, none of them are very bad, and Liz is meta. If you don't have Leon, he's now being replaced by Liz, and well, you can still skip if you want. None of them will actually change too much if you already have Leon, and if you don't have Ihachi to take advantage of Meline, for example. With that said, those are my opinions. What are yours? Please say here in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I'll be making the full reviews later. See you soon in the next video or live stream. Bye!